When men cheat, why do women carry the bill? In their reputation, their relationships, their rooms, and their own minds. A deep cultural and psychological analysis by Jacky. She paid his tab. When men cheat, why do women carry the bill? In their reputation, their relationships, their rooms, and their own minds. N, narrative, hijack, I, identity, erasure, T, the talk, T, trickle-down doubt, I, incoming fire, first, to her, before the analysis, before the framework, before the citations and the experts. This is for you. You who carried the weight of something you didn't carry. You who walked into rooms and felt it. The sideways glance, the dropped conversation, the sympathy that felt like suspicion. You who kept showing up anyway. Dressed, capable, smiling, exhausted. You are not the footnote in his story. You are the whole book. Now let's talk about what really happened. The setup. Why this question matters more than you think. Let's start with the uncomfortable truth. When a man in public life, a president, a CEO, a pastor, a husband in your own family, commits infidelity, something strange and deeply predictable happens. The man becomes the subject of the story for about a news cycle. The woman? She becomes the story, she becomes the reason, she becomes the cautionary tale, she becomes the question. Why didn't she know? Was she cold? Was she boring? Was she too focused on her career? Was she too much? Not enough? And oh, isn't it tragic how smart she was, how much she'd accomplished, and she still couldn't keep her man. This is not accidental, this is architecture. Society built this. Culture handed out the blueprints, and understanding the mechanism is the first step to dismantling it, both collectively and in the private sacred space of a woman's own healing. We're going to use the N.I.T.T.I Framework as our guide, 5 levels, 5 wounds, but more importantly, 5 places where healing can begin. Betrayal is not just what the unfaithful partner does, it is what the audience then does with the faithful one. The architecture of public infidelity, the voices in the room, the thinkers we're pulling in. Esther Perel, psychotherapist, author, Mating in Captivity, the world's foremost thinker on erotic intelligence and infidelity. Her work dismantles the idea that cheating is simply about the absent spouse and shows how cultural narratives weaponize the betrayed partner. Andrew Bustamante, ex-CIA officer, human behavior and influence expert, former intelligence operative who now teaches how power, narrative control, and social manipulation work. Frameworks that explain exactly why public perception pivots to blame the woman. Robert Greene, author, The 48 Laws of Power, The Laws of Human Nature. Greene's deep study of power dynamics and social status shows how society uses the betrayed woman as a mirror, reflecting anxieties, projections, and status comparisons that have nothing to do with her. Kita Rose, relationship coach, trauma-informed educator, specializes in the intersection of public trauma and private grief, how women navigate betrayal when the wound is performed in front of an audience. Ace Metaphor, cultural theorist, speaker, unlearning misogyny, breaks down the cultural conditioning that teaches both men and women to police the betrayed woman and how that conditioning gets passed down through family systems and social networks. Narrative Hijack, Level 1 of the N.I.T.T.I Framework, the moment the story gets stolen. The second infidelity becomes public, a narrative race begins. Who gets to define what happened? And here is where society reveals its bias with breathtaking consistency. The story migrates from what he did to what was wrong with her. Think about Hillary Clinton. By every measurable standard, she was one of the most credentialed, accomplished, enduring public figures of the 20th century. Yale Law, First Lady, U.S. Senator, Secretary of State, presidential nominee, and yet in the popular imagination, her biography became almost inseparable from Monica Lewinsky and Bill's infidelity, not because she committed any act, but because society needed someone to assign the story to. Andrew Bustamante, drawing on CIA-level understanding of narrative warfare, would call this narrative capture. The moment a person loses control of their own story and it gets rewritten by external observers with their own agendas. Intelligence agencies do this to enemies. Society does it to women who've been cheated on without even realizing it's a weapon. The first casualty of public infidelity isn't trust, it's the woman's authorship of her own life. Framework analysis drawing on Bustamante's narrative control doctrine. Esther Perel, in her unflinching work on infidelity, makes this point precisely. We live in a culture that cannot tolerate ambiguity in love stories. Someone must be the villain, and since the man is often powerful, charming, or too central to discard, the story turns to the woman. Was she emotionally unavailable, too ambitious? The narrative needs a problem it can point to, and it will manufacture one if it has to. Robert Greene, in The Laws of Human Nature, explains the mechanism. People cannot process moral complexity, so they flatten it. The wife becomes either the saint who endured, stripped of agency, or the fool who didn't know, stripped of intelligence. Neither is true. Both are reductive. Both serve the audience, not her. Why it happens, the psychological engine. Neurologically, the human brain seeks cognitive closure, especially in emotionally charged situations. A famous man cheats. The brain asks, why? The answer, because he chose to, is unsatisfying because it offers no lesson, no pattern, no protection. But because something was missing at home, that's a story with a cause and a solution. It's more comfortable. It's also deeply unfair. The neurological impact of narrative hijack. Shame internalization. When a woman hears her story told back to her with herself as the problem, the brain's threat response activates. Cortisol floods the system, the prefrontal cortex, rational self, goes offline, and the amygdala, fear self, takes over. She begins to believe it. Identity fragmentation. The brain holds multiple self-narratives simultaneously. When external narrative contradicts internal self-concept, neurological dissonance creates psychological exhaustion, the mental energy of simply existing in public doubles. Hypervigilance. Once you know the story is out there, you scan every interaction for it, every room you walk into, every pause before someone speaks. This is a form of social PTSD, and it is physiologically real. First, identity erasure. Level 2 of the N.I.T.T.I Framework. When everything she built gets footnoted. This is perhaps the cruelest dimension. The moment the infidelity becomes public knowledge, a woman's entire biography, her degrees, her career, her contributions, her art, her sacrifice, her intelligence, gets quietly subordinated to this one thing she had nothing to do with. Hillary Clinton holds a law degree from Yale. She was the first female U.S. Senator from New York. She served as Secretary of State and shaped global foreign policy. She ran for president twice, and yet for a certain type of conversation, all of that gets prefaced with, despite what happened with Bill, as if her entire existence must now be processed through the lens of his choice. Ace Metaphor calls this conditional credibility, the cultural practice of deciding that a woman's achievements are only fully valid if her personal life is above reproach. It is a standard applied almost exclusively to women. A man who cheats on his wife and then runs a country is called complicated. A woman whose husband cheated is called humiliated, as if the humiliation is hers to own. Society does not reduce a man's resume because of his infidelity. It expands a woman's failure because of his. ACE metaphor, cultural framework on conditional credibility. Kita Rose, working in the trauma-informed space, describes watching clients, brilliant, accomplished women, begin to second-guess themselves across every domain after public betrayal, not because their skills changed, because the social mirroring changed. When the people around you start to look at you differently, your brain updates its model of itself. The neuroscience of identity under attack. The brain constructs identity through social mirroring. We understand ourselves partly through how others reflect us back. This is not weakness, it is neurobiology. When that reflection suddenly distorts, when the accomplished professional is now being described primarily as the wife who got cheated on, the brain scrambles to reconcile the two images. The physical manifestation is real: disrupted sleep, brain fog, difficulty concentrating, appetite changes. The brain is not catastrophizing. It is genuinely working overtime trying to hold two irreconcilable realities simultaneously. I know who I am, and they are telling me something different. What identity erasure does to the body: cortisol overload, chronic social stress, being watched, judged, reduced, triggers sustained cortisol elevation. Over time, this affects memory formation, immune function, and cardiovascular health. It is not just stress, it is a physical attack. Diminished self-efficacy. When your accomplishments are consistently filtered through a lens of pity or judgment, the brain's reward system for achievement gradually becomes muted. Why celebrate the win if someone will use it as a setup? Grief without permission. She is grieving the loss of her own unqualified story, a grief nobody acknowledges because society thinks the betrayal is the only wound. It's not. T, the talk. Level 3, gossip, family, friends, and the hot topic circuit, the performance of other people's concern. Here is where it gets personal, deeply, intimately, almost unbearably personal, because the public arena is one thing, but then it comes home, it comes to Sunday dinner, it comes to the group chat, it comes with casseroles and concerned faces and questions with soft voices that are really just gossip in a cardigan. Robert Greene is ruthless about this in the 48 Laws of Power. Nothing unites people faster than a shared observation about someone else's misfortune. It creates social bonding through contrast. We're not like that. It generates conversational currency that people spend freely because it costs them nothing and pays in social connection. Esther Perel identifies something even more cutting. People who love you will sometimes be the worst offenders because they feel they have the right to discuss you. They frame their gossip as concern. I'm just worried about her. I'm just saying what everyone's thinking. What they're really doing is processing their own anxieties about love, loyalty, and vulnerability, using her life as the raw material. The family dimension, when home is not safe. Family gossip about a woman's infidelity experience is its own particular cruelty because it happens in the space where she should be most protected. Mothers, sisters, aunts, cousins. Sometimes the very people who love her most become part of the chorus asking, "But what do you think was really going on? Was everything okay between you two?" These questions are wrapped in love. They still cut. Kita Rose describes a phenomenon she calls the compassion interrogation, where people use the language of support. I'm here for you, I just want to understand, to extract information that will later become social currency. The betrayed woman finds herself performing her own wound for audiences of varying sizes, from WhatsApp groups to family dinners over and over, without ever getting to simply heal in quiet. She was not invited to the conversation about herself, she was just the subject of it. Kita Rose on public betrayal and private grief. The neurological impact of constant exposure. Every time the story is rehashed in her presence, or she knows it's being rehashed somewhere without her, her nervous system re-traumatizes. This is not metaphor. The brain does not distinguish well between the original traumatic event and the reminder of it. The same physiological stress response fires, the same cortisol floods, the same threat signals activate. Now multiply that by every family event, every friend group gathering, every colleague who heard something. She is not just healing from one wound, she is healing from the wound and then being cut open again and again and again by people who think they're offering sympathy. What gossip actually does, physiologically and psychologically. Re-traumatization cycles. Each retelling or reference activates trauma memory pathways, resetting the healing clock. The body stays in a state of chronic stress rather than moving through the natural grief arc. Social withdrawal. To escape the gossip circuit, many women begin to pull back from social spaces, the very support networks they need most. This isolation accelerates depression and anxiety. Loss of narrative agency. Being talked about without being able to control the narrative creates a profound psychological helplessness. The clinical term is locus of control shift. She feels like an object in her own story, not the author. The performance tax, showing up with dignity while people are discussing you, costs enormous mental and emotional energy. Energy that is supposed to be going toward actual healing, actual living, actual thriving. T, Trickle-Down Doubt, Level 4. When her judgment gets questioned everywhere. The redistribution of competence. Once the gossip takes hold and identity erasure has set in, something profoundly unjust happens in family and professional systems. People start quietly questioning her judgment, not about her marriage, but about everything else. The logic, though never stated aloud, runs like this. She didn't see what was happening in her own home, so maybe she doesn't see clearly in other domains. Decision-making roles shift. Opinions she would previously have led are now checked against someone else. Business decisions go around her. Family plans are made without her input first. She gets managed where she used to lead. Andrew Bustamante would identify this as a credibility cascade failure. Once trust in one domain is disrupted, even unjustly, the human mind, which relies on heuristics and pattern matching, begins to generalize that doubt. It is irrational, it is also extremely common, and it is almost never done consciously. They didn't demote her on paper, they just stopped calling her first. The invisible professional penalty of public betrayal. Robert Greene is precise about this in his analysis of social power. Perception of competence and perception of personal stability are linked in other people's minds. A woman whose personal life has been publicly disrupted finds that her professional aura, that invisible authority that she built over years, subtly erodes. Not because anything she did changed, because the optics changed in the family system. Within families, this can manifest in even more intimate ways. She stops being the one people call when there's a problem. Her advice is taken with a new hesitancy. Younger family members who looked up to her are gently redirected. It's subtle enough that she can't call it out directly, but she feels every single instance of it. The cumulative effect is devastating. The physical reality of diminishment. Being systematically underestimated has documented physiological effects. Research on stereotype threat. The anxiety produced by environments where you know you might be judged through a negative lens shows measurable cognitive impairment. The very mental resources she needs to perform at her best are being consumed by the overhead cost of navigating others' reduced expectations of her. The cascade of competence doubt. Decision fatigue amplified. When your judgment is being quietly questioned, you second-guess yourself more. Decisions that were once automatic now require extra cycles. Exhaustion compounds. Imposter syndrome spike. Even in women with strong established identities, the external doubt will eventually find cracks in the internal confidence. The brain is too social not to be affected. Leadership withdrawal. Rather than fight to reclaim authority, many women, worn down by the other levels of this framework, quietly step back. The loss is theirs, and the system that caused it faces no accountability. Physiological, elevated baseline anxiety, chronic monitoring of others' perceptions keeps the sympathetic nervous system activated. Fight or flight at a low hum all day. This is associated with elevated blood pressure, digestive disruption, and immune suppression. First, incoming fire, level 5. The strays, the drive-bys, the ambushes. Minding your business is not enough. She's managed to get herself into a state of something approaching okayness. She's had some good days. She went to work and felt like herself. She laughed genuinely at dinner. And then someone, somewhere, for a reason she may never fully understand, throws it at her. A comment at a networking event, a joke at a family gathering, a message from someone who thinks they're being helpful, a colleague who brings it up in a meeting like an aside, a stranger on social media, someone she barely knows using her pain as small talk. These are incoming fire events, unsolicited, unexpected, and often delivered with a casualness that is its own particular violence, because the person delivering it does not feel the impact. They've moved on before she even processes the hit. But she carries it home, replays it at 2 a.m., adds it to the running tally of moments when the world reminded her that this thing lives outside of her, permanently, accessible to anyone who wants to use it. She had been fine, and then in 30 seconds, someone who barely knows her name made sure she knew they knew her wound. On the ambush dynamic, the comparative phenomenon, at least I'm not her, Robert Greene and Ace Metaphor both speak to this from different angles. Some people keep the wound alive because it serves them. If a high-achieving woman's relationship was publicly imploded, it functions as permission slip for others in mediocre situations to feel superior. At least my marriage isn't that. At least I wasn't embarrassed like that. It is emotional currency, and she is the bank being robbed. Bustamante would frame this through the lens of comparative positioning, a fundamental human behavior where we assess our own status relative to others. When someone whose status we perceive as high experiences a visible fall, it creates a temporary status elevation for observers. People are addicted to this feeling. They will return to the wound repeatedly, hers, to redose. This is not about malice. Always, it is about a culture that has given people permission to use women's private pain as public entertainment, social currency, and personal reassurance. The woman at the center of it never agreed to this contract. She never signed up to be the cautionary tale that makes everyone else feel better about their own compromised love stories. The physiological reality of incoming fire. Hypervigilance becomes baseline. When you've been ambushed enough times, your nervous system stops fully relaxing, even in safe situations. You're always scanning for the next hit. This is a recognized trauma response. Startle response activation. Repeated unexpected re-exposures to trauma cues literally alter the nervous system's calibration. The body learns that calm is temporary, peace is conditional. Emotional exhaustion, the energy required to absorb, process, and appear unaffected by incoming fire in real time in public, is extraordinary. Smiling through it, laughing it off. Oh, water under the bridge. That performance costs years. Secondary losses. Some women quietly disengage from spaces, careers, and friendships to avoid the possibility of incoming fire. These are real losses, professional, social, personal, that never get counted in the damage report. Reclamation, how she heals and how to actually help. All of this framework in the 5 levels, the mechanisms, the neurological impacts matters because naming the architecture is the beginning of dismantling it. You cannot heal what you haven't named. You cannot fight what you haven't seen clearly. So let's get specific. For her, the inner work. 1. Reauthorship. The first act of healing is radical narrative reclamation, not public, private. Esther Perel says this beautifully. The question is not, how do I get over this, but who do I want to become on the other side of this? The story is not over. The story was interrupted. She gets to decide what the next chapter says, and it does not have to reference him to be valid. 2. Decoupling identity from the event. Your degrees did not become less real. Your professional wins did not become less earned. Your friendships did not become less genuine. Nothing you built was unmade by what he chose. This requires active, repetitive cognitive work because the brain will keep trying to integrate the social messages it's receiving. Therapy, journaling, mentorship, and trusted circles are not luxuries here. They are neurological maintenance. 3. The body first. Kita Rose consistently emphasizes, before the cognitive work, honor the physical response. The body held this: sleep, move, eat, breathe. Not because it's a cliche, because cortisol regulation and vagal nerve activation are the physiological prerequisites for the emotional work to land. You cannot think your way out of a nervous system response without resourcing the nervous system first. 4. Controlled exposure, on her terms. This means deciding consciously which conversation she enters, which spaces she occupies, and what she does and doesn't engage. She is allowed to say, I don't discuss that. She is allowed to change the subject. She is allowed to leave the room. She owes no one a performance of her wound. Bustamante would call this narrative sovereignty, reclaiming authorship not by explaining yourself, but by simply refusing to participate in other people's framing. 5. The permission to be extraordinary anyway. This is the one nobody gives her, so she has to give it to herself. She is allowed to be brilliant, to be celebrated, to win, to be beautiful and powerful and confident. Not despite what happened, but simply because she is those things and they were never his to take. Healing is not the absence of the story, it is the day she tells it or doesn't tell it on her own terms. Integrating Perel, Rose, and Green on post-betrayal identity for those around her, the practical protocol, how to actually support, not perform support, stop discussing her situation when she's not there, full stop, no exceptions dressed up as concern, restore the baseline, talk to her about her work, her ideas, her plans, give her brain a space to be competent and present, not just a space to process pain. Don't make her perform her grief for your comfort. How are you really doing can be an intrusion. Follow her lead on when and how she wants to go there. Actively counter the narrative when you hear it. Actually, let me tell you what she's been building. Be a counter-narrator. It costs you very little. It gives her a great deal. Maintain her decision-making authority. Ask her opinion first. Include her as you always did. Do not quietly redistribute her roles. Check yourself on that impulse. Call out the incoming fire when you see it. You don't have to make it a scene, but that's not something we need to bring up. Is enough to signal to her that someone in the room is not a threat. The biology of betrayal, what nobody told her about her own body. The vagus nerve polyvagal theory and why she cannot simply move on. There is a nerve in her body that has been working overtime since this began. It is called the vagus nerve, the longest nerve in the autonomic nervous system, running from the brainstem all the way through the throat, heart, lungs, and gut. It is not a metaphor. It is not self-help language. It is anatomy. and it is the reason why telling a betrayed woman to just get over it is not only emotionally ignorant, it is neurologically impossible without the right conditions. Dr. Stephen Porges' polyvagal theory gives us the framework. The nervous system operates in 3 distinct states, and which state she is in determines everything. Her ability to think, to speak, to connect, to feel safe, to heal, to lead, to love again. State 1, safe and social, ventral vagal activation. She is regulated, warm, creative, thinking clearly. Her voice is full. Her eyes are bright. She can laugh, genuinely. This is where healing lives. This is where she lives when the world lets her. State 2, fight or flight, sympathetic activation. Threat detected, heart racing, breathing shallow, jaw tight, scanning every room. Prefrontal cortex, her clarity, her articulation, her grace, partially offline. This is where she lives most days now. State 3, shutdown/freeze, dorsal vagal collapse, too much for too long, numbness, dissociation, going through the motions, smiling at dinner, present but not there, the body's last resort protection when fight and flight have both failed. Now here is what the 5 levels of N.I.T.T.I are doing to this nerve, in real time in her body, whether anyone acknowledges it or not. The vagus nerve through every N.I.T.T.I level, N, narrative hijack, leads to fight or flight fires immediately. The moment she realizes the story has been taken from her, that she is now the subject of other people's narrative, her vagus nerve registers it as social threat. And to the nervous system, social threat is not meaningfully different from physical threat. The same alarm sounds. Heart rate elevates. Breathing shallows. The prefrontal cortex goes offline. She is trying to hold a conversation, attend a meeting, walk into a room, while her vagus nerve is screaming danger. This is why she sometimes can't find her words, why she over-explains, why she rehearses conversations at 2 a.m. Her nervous system is in active threat mode, and it is pulling resources from the very capacities she needs most. Identity erasure leads to chronic low-grade activation. This one is insidious because it does not arrive as a single shock. It arrives as sustained low-level threat signaling. Every interaction where she senses she's being seen through the lens of his infidelity rather than her own worth, her vagus nerve logs it. Every slightly too long pause before someone speaks to her. Every moment her accomplishments get footnoted. The vagus nerve is a social safety detector, constantly reading microsignals of tone, facial expression, body language. When those signals consistently say you are being reduced, even subtly, the nerve never fully returns to safety. She lives in a chronic middle state, functional, but never fully at rest. What looks like anxiety or low mood is actually vagal dysregulation from sustained social threat exposure. T, the talk, repeated trauma reactivation. Every time the story is retold in her presence, or she knows it's being retold somewhere without her, her vagus nerve fires the original trauma response all over again. The nerve does not timestamp. It does not say, that was then, this is now. It says, this signal matches a previous threat, and it responds accordingly. Same cortisol spike, same heart rate elevation, same partial shutdown of the prefrontal cortex. This is why the family dinner that brings it up can undo 2 weeks of healing in 30 seconds. It is not weakness. It is vagal reactivation, a physiological process that has nothing to do with how strong she is. T, trickle-down doubt to social hierarchy threat. The vagus nerve is exquisitely sensitive to status and belonging signals. When she starts being called for input last, when decisions root around her, when her authority is quietly redistributed, her nervous system reads this as a drop in social standing. And social demotion to the mammalian nervous system is genuinely dangerous. Historically, loss of standing in a group meant reduced access to resources, protection, survival. The vagus nerve has not updated for modern office dynamics or family dinner politics. The result, she works twice as hard to prove herself, running an energy-expensive background process of social threat monitoring constantly on top of everything else she is doing. Incoming fire, startle and shut down. She was regulated, moving toward safety, maybe for the first time in days, and then someone ambushes her with it. The vagus nerve's response to sudden, unexpected social threat is a startle-free sequence, a split second of complete system disruption before the body decides, fight, flee, or collapse. For many women in this situation, it is the shutdown pathway. She smiles. She says something gracious. She appears fine. Inside, her heart has dropped. Her gut has clenched, literally, because the vagus nerve innervates the entire digestive system and stress shows up there first. Her voice may have gone slightly flat. Her eyes may have lost a little light. She got herself home, but the nerve fired, and now the recovery process has to start again. When the vagus nerve is chronically dysregulated over months, which is exactly what the 5 N.I.T.T.I levels create, the physical toll is documented and serious. Disrupted heart rate variability, digestive distress, immune suppression, sleep disruption, difficulty with emotional regulation she may interpret as falling apart, but which is actually her nervous system depleted from sustained threat response. And here is what makes it worse. Vagal dysregulation impairs the very capacities she needs to heal: clear thinking, emotional processing, connection with safe people, the ability to feel joy. All of these require ventral vagal activation, and the chronic threat environment of public betrayal keeps pulling her back out of it. Vagal restoration protocol. Healing is not optional, and it is not self-care. This is why Kita Rose is right when she says body first. You cannot talk therapy your way through vagal dysregulation without also resourcing the nerve itself. Cognitive understanding of what happened, however important, cannot reach the parts of the nervous system that are holding the wound. The body does not speak in sentences. It speaks in sensation, rhythm, breath, touch, sound, and movement. What follows are not suggestions. They are not wellness tips. They are neurological interventions, each one with a documented physiological mechanism. The difference between a woman who is intellectually processing her healing and a woman whose nervous system is actually physiologically coming home is whether she has access to these. Humming, singing, and chanting. Mechanism: direct vagal stimulation. The vagus nerve passes through the larynx and pharynx. When she hums, sings, or chants, the vibration directly stimulates the nerve, activating the parasympathetic brake, slowing heart rate, and signaling to the entire nervous system that it is safe to relax. This is not incidental, it is anatomy. Even 5 minutes of sustained humming measurably shifts vagal tone. A song she loves, a hymn, a hum in the shower at 6 a.m. It counts, it heals. Slow, extended exhale breathing. Mechanism: parasympathetic brake activation. The exhale is controlled by the parasympathetic nervous system, the rest and digest counterpart to fight or flight. When the exhale is longer than the inhale, the vagus nerve activates its calming function. Inhale for 4 counts, exhale for 6 to 8. Repeat. This is not relaxation advice. This is a direct instruction to the nervous system. The threat has passed. You can come down now, done before a difficult conversation, after an ambush event, before sleep. It changes the physiological baseline. Cold water on the face. Mechanism: diving reflex, instant vagal reset. Splashing cold water on the face or submerging it briefly triggers the mammalian dive reflex, one of the most powerful automatic vagal responses in the body. Heart rate drops, the sympathetic system pulls back. It is fast, it is free, and it works in under 30 seconds. After an incoming fire event, the ambush comment, the family dinner moment, cold water on the face is not dramatics. It is first aid for the nervous system. Handshake, safe physical touch. Mechanism, co-regulation and oxytocin release. Humans are wired for co-regulation, the process by which one regulated nervous system helps another return to safety. Safe touch from a trusted person, a hand held, a genuine embrace, a shoulder rested against, releases oxytocin, reduces cortisol, and activates the ventral vagal system. This is why isolation compounds the wound. She needs safe people, not people who want to process her story, but people who can simply be present with her, physically, without agenda. That presence is medicine. Rhythmic movement mechanism, bilateral stimulation and nervous system reset. Walking, dancing, swimming, drumming, any rhythmic bilateral movement where the body alternates left and right, activates both brain hemispheres and creates a gentle neurological reset. This is the same principle behind EMDR therapy for trauma. The rhythm tells the nervous system that it is moving through, not stuck, that time is passing, that the body is safe and capable and alive. She does not need a gym. She needs to move rhythmically with intention in her own time. Genuine laughter, mechanism, vagal tone restoration and cortisol reduction, not performed, not polite, genuine, the kind that comes from somewhere real and surprises her. Laughter activates the vagus nerve, releases endorphins, and measurably reduces cortisol. It also, crucially, interrupts the hypervigilance loop by forcing the nervous system into a state incompatible with threat response. She is allowed to laugh. She is allowed to find something hilarious. That laughter is not betraying her grief. It is healing it. I, being truly heard. Mechanism, social engagement, system activation. The vagus nerve's ventral state, safe and social, is activated through the social engagement system, eye contact, prosodic voice, attuned listening. When someone truly hears her, without needing anything from her story, without turning it into gossip, without making it about themselves, her nervous system registers safety at a cellular level. This is not emotional support as a nice extra. It is a neurological requirement for healing. The right witness at the right moment does what no amount of solitary processing can. These are not self-care suggestions. They are neurological interventions. Every woman in this situation deserves to know your body has not failed you. Your body has been doing exactly what bodies do under sustained threat, and your body knows how to come home if you give it the conditions to do so. Vagal restoration, N.I.T.T.I Framework, integration. The world already knows how women around the world have always healed this. Here is the extraordinary thing. Long before polyvagal theory had a name, long before neuroscience could explain the mechanism, cultures around the world developed healing practices that do exactly what the vagus nerve needs. They didn't call it vagal restoration, they called it community, they called it ritual, they called it music, they called it the things women do together when one of them is broken open. The world already knows how to heal her. The question is whether we are willing to remember. African traditions, Ubuntu, communal mourning, and the healing circle. Across the African continent, grief and pain are never carried alone. The concept of Ubuntu, I am because we are, means that a woman's wound belongs to the community, and the community shows up for it. Women gather, they sing together, activating the vagus nerve collectively through shared sound and vibration. They cook together, touch, move, and witness each other without agenda. The Zulu tradition of ukulonifa creates spaces of deep relational safety. West African communal mourning rituals use drumming, the bilateral rhythm that neurologically processes trauma, as medicine. What science now calls co-regulation, Africa has always called being with your people. Asian traditions, breathwork, tea ceremony, and the wisdom of slowness. In Japanese culture, the practice of MR, intentional pause, sacred emptiness, creates the neurological breathing room the vagus nerve needs to reset. The tea ceremony is not about tea, it is a slow, rhythmic, sensory practice that activates the parasympathetic system through deliberate breath and movement. In Indian tradition, pranayama breathwork, extended exhale, alternate nostril breathing, is literally vagal stimulation in ancient form. Chinese medicine has always understood the gut-brain connection that polyvagal theory now maps scientifically. When the gut is calm, the mind is calm. Korean nunchi, the art of reading emotional atmospheres, creates communities that can sense when a woman needs to be held without being asked. European traditions, the long table, confession, and the healing walk. Southern European cultures, Italian, Greek, Spanish, have long understood that the communal table is not just about food. The extended meal, the laughter, the physical proximity of trusted people, the prosodic voices. This is vagal co-regulation disguised as Sunday lunch. Nordic walking traditions, rhythmic, bilateral in nature, are one of the most effective nervous system reset practices in existence. In the Celtic tradition, Anamkara, the soul friend, is the one person to whom you are fully known and fully safe. The presence of that person activates the social engagement system at its deepest level. Eastern European banya and sauna traditions use cold water exposure, triggering the dive reflex, as communal healing practice. North America, indigenous ceremony, gospel, and the power of being witnessed. Indigenous North American healing traditions center the talking circle, a space of witnessed speech where the speaker is seen and heard without interruption, without judgment, without their story being used as currency. This is the social engagement system at full activation. The sweat lodge combines heat, darkness, breath, and communal presence, a full-body vagal intervention. Black American church tradition holds one of the most complete vagal healing packages in the world. Gospel music, singing together, call and response, social engagement, physical movement in worship, bilateral rhythm, and community witness. When a woman stands in that space, supported and seen, her nervous system is being healed by ancient collective intelligence. South America, dance, candomblé, and the body that knows. In Brazil, the Afro-Brazilian tradition of candomblé uses music, dance, and communal ritual as pathways to healing that bypass the cognitive mind entirely and speak directly to the body, exactly where vagal dysregulation lives. Tango, the Argentine dance of connection, requires two nervous systems to co-regulate in real time through touch, breath, and shared movement. It is partner co-regulation made visible. Across South America, curanderismo healing traditions have always understood that emotional wounds live in the body first. The healer works with breath, plant medicine, sound, and touch, restoring nervous system regulation before anything else. Australia and Oceania, songlines, sea, and the healing of country. Aboriginal Australian culture holds the concept of songlines, the invisible pathways across the land that carry the stories, the music, and the healing of the ancestors. Walking a songline while singing the associated song is a neurological intervention, rhythmic movement plus vocalization plus connection to place and community. 3 vagal activators simultaneously. Maori healing traditions in New Zealand use waiata, communal song, as medicine for collective and individual pain. The Pacific Islander tradition of fa'alavelave, coming together in community during difficulty, ensures no woman carries her wound in isolation. The ocean itself, used in healing practices across Oceania, provides cold water exposure, rhythmic sound, and profound sensory grounding, all of which speak directly to the nervous system. Every culture, on every continent, in every era, found a way to do what the vagus nerve needs. They gathered, they sang, they moved, they touched, they witnessed, they breathed together. The science is new, the wisdom is ancient. She has always known how to heal. She just needs the world to stop interrupting it. The bigger reckoning, how society does better, for real. Individual healing is necessary but insufficient. The machinery that creates these 5 levels, narrative hijack, identity erasure, the talk, trickle-down doubt, incoming fire, is cultural. It requires cultural interruption. Dismantle conditional credibility. Society must stop applying the tax of personal life perfection to women's professional and intellectual authority. A woman's accomplishments are complete in themselves. They do not require footnoting against her relationship history. This requires active, conscious counter-programming in how we write about women, how we talk about them, how we frame their achievements in our own daily conversations. Recalibrate the gossip economy. The gossip economy runs on the free supply of women's pain as social currency. Stop paying for it and the market dries up. This is not idealism. It is a practical choice that every individual makes every day. When the conversation turns to, what do you think really happened with her? You get to choose not to participate. That choice made by enough people changes the culture. Journalism, media, public discourse. The framing of public infidelity stories is not neutral. Editorial choices about who gets centered, whose name leads the headline, what images are chosen, what questions get asked. These choices compose the cultural narrative. Media organizations bear real responsibility for challenging the habit of centering the betrayed woman as the curiosity, the subject, the story. Expand the definition of who gets believed. Ace metaphor is pointed about this. When a powerful man says, "I made a mistake," society generally grants him that frame. When the woman in his life says, "I am more than this moment," she has to fight for it. That asymmetry is cultural, it is taught, and it can be untaught. Starting in schools, starting in families, starting in the conversations we have with children about what it means to be accountable, what it means to be blamed, and why those are not always the same thing. The culture that wounds her is made of individuals. The healing of the culture is also made of individuals. Every person who refuses to participate in her reduction is a small, necessary revolution. A call to cultural accountability, one more time, for the woman in the room. You did not do this, you did not cause this, you were not the variable that needed adjusting. The noise around you, the gossip, the glances, the questions disguised as concern, the moments when someone used your wound as their punchline, none of that was a verdict. It was just noise from people who needed something to talk about and chose without your permission to choose you. Your degrees are real, your work is real, your intelligence is real. Your accomplishments did not lose value because someone else made a choice. You are not a warning, you are not a lesson, you are not a cautionary tale for other women's dinner table conversations. You are tired, of course you are. You have been carrying the weight of his decision in your body, in your reputation, in your relationships, in your sleep, in every room you've walked into. That weight is real and it is heavy, and you are allowed to put it down. You are allowed to be extraordinary again, loudly, without apology, without the asterisk, without explaining yourself to anyone who wants to frame your brilliance through the lens of what he did. The story is not over. The story is not that. The story is you, fully, without footnotes. She is not the footnote. She is the book. N.I.T.T.I Framework Analysis. Drawing on Esther Perel, Andrew Bustamante, Robert Greene, Keita Rose, Ace Metaphor.